It's a good time to ask people to do this while they're bored in their house and they don't have anything to do.
You're not going to like captive subjects and captive audience, my man.
He got me doing a slurp sound. Jesus Christ, there's so much incriminating.
Wait till he loses that.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Just fuck it and do it. Fuck it and do it. He's gonna make the internet a hard place for you, bro.
Yeah.
You better keep things real chill with Max.
It already is.
Oh.
Hello, Sonic City Council is now in session. Thank you so much for inviting us into your headphones, your car, your mind. What up, Davey Sipes?
Oh, Jimmy Davidson! From across the ether, we combine forces once again. And citizens, you're here to watch it. Come join, mingle. Let our energies be twanged.
Wonder Twin powers activate. Gavel. Virtual patriotic gavel. Yes. Hello, Davey Sipes.
Hello.
Oh, I couldn't. Yeah. Oh, nice impression of my hello. Yeah. I yes. Everything that you just said. Yes, I agree with that.
I feel like I was clearing my throat to go to like Al Pacino, but I'm like, my brain, I'm fried, like so exhausted right now. I have no movie like quotes in the back pocket to pull out. So I was like,
Yeah.
You can't do Al Pacino without movie quotes. I'm just going to settle and pretend like I just cleared my throat like a normal dude.
In the words of Al Pacino. Oh. Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Little baby.
It's good.
Sorry. I have to say little babies every time I think of Al Pacino. Okay.
Yeah.
Back on track.
Yeah. I like going off the rails like a minute in.
We're so pro.
Yeah.
We're so pro.
Yeah. That's always good. Well, it is good to see you, sir. I'm excited to talk with you today. I'm excited for our guest today. It was someone that I had thought about asking to get on here, and then was kind of like, I'm not sure if she'll do it, and then reached out and like hit me back immediately and said, oh yeah, I'd love to do it, and totally blew me away. Today we have the wonderful and talented Jordan West from Grace Potter, and she's a drummer with her, and she's also in her own right a very great songwriter and multi-instrumentalist and loop aficionado. And yes, we're just so happy to have her on the podcast today.
Yeah. Talk about a supreme human being, a crazy, like a musical talent that makes you go, what? And because of all of these salient facts, she's also found her way to a pretty sweet gig. Like, if motherfuckers don't know who Grace Potter is, or has been for, like, what, the last, like, 12, 15 years in pop music, like, you've been under rocks in the brush in the time before time, and you need to join us now, because shit's been going on. Yeah.
You're living under a rock, no pun intended.
Oh, Christ. Use those as segues. Intended. That's a segue. Like, I mean, it didn't make me feel good, but I felt like something picked me up and moved me physically and turned me this way.
The only person
like
my dad
degrees.
Jokes are designed to... The only feel good that happens from my dad jokes are on my end. It's not for the listener. It's purely for my effect.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that. That happens in band practices, that happens in car rides, and it happens on this podcast. It's part of who I am, and I can't help myself.
Good Lord. Ugh.
Yeah.
I'm so terrified because you're not even close to being anybody's dad yet. And it's just like, what about when he has like 3 children? It's like, oh, fuck, shit.
Dude, my dad is already like the level of he's at for his age is already so bad, and I get my humor from him, and I'm like, oh, this is only going to get worse, only going to get worse as time goes on. So yeah, it's so I got that going.
Yeah,
for me,
isn't that nice? Well, all right then.
Yes. So anyway, if you haven't, please go check out Jordan on Instagram, and so you can get kind of a feel for where she's coming from. Check her out on YouTube. She's doing all sorts of videos for Sweetwater and Reverb and doing her drum thing online. So that'll all be in the description. But please check those out so you can catch up to what a wonderful talent she is if you are already unaware of what she's doing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you don't know, your mind's about to be blown. Clear
If you
sky,
don't
sky high out the
know,
water. You
yeah.
won't know what
If
to
you
do with
don't
your
know,
pants.
now you
You're
know.
going to poop your pants for sure. She's that good. You're not ready. You're not ready. Okay. Or maybe you are. I mean, hopefully you are ready because Jordan's amazing.
Yeah, I know we're ready.
Yeah.
So let's get to it.
Okay.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same reason why I can play an instrument but can't dance. There's just certain rhythmic things that I just can't do.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand.
I don't know,
the problem.
man. I
Are
feel
you
like
not
you've
a
got.
dancer, Jordan?
Oh no.
No. You have
No, I
you
mean-
have so much copious rhythm. I would figure it comes natural.
I can move in time, but it doesn't look good. It looks very like a robot, like very unnatural. I can do the robot very well.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the
Yeah.
fluid parts of dance that I don't quite understand.
Yeah, I've
I feel
heard
you.
that. Yeah, I've heard that that's because that as musicians you're listening to more than just the basic pulse of the music, and you're like listening to too much in a song to be focused on dancing. I don't know if that's true, but I'm just gonna go with that and use that as my excuse.
I hate to contradict you so quick into the castle part, but I've watched you play. So Jesse's situation is simply he's one of these cats who's like, oh, I don't dance, but when he's on stage with his band, he's like all over the place and he's like shimmying and he's
You have an instrument
pogoing and
on.
he's like popping a little bit.
If you
You
have an
know.
instrument on, it's different. It's like there's something.
It
It's like
is.
I can't sing lead and not play drums because it's really weird. It's like super awkward.
Well,
But if
I've
I'm behind
watched
the
you
drums,
play. It
it's fine.
seems two things at once is kind of your like thing. Because man, you make that look super easy. I mean, I like to play bass and drums at the same time, but the way you put it all together, especially the drum samples I watched on that video, I think on Instagram or something. Was it
Oh,
Instagram? Yeah.
the reverb one with the Alabama Shakes ones.
No, it was just like a jam one where you started looping, you're hitting the tom, and then you added like the ping on the bell of the ride, and then you played over that like a full on part. So you had like this underline, like a drum line, kind of like gung, gung, gang, 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 gang. And then you started ripping over that, and I was like, turn this shit up real quick. Let's take a listen. All right. Okay, all right. This is going to be a good day. So yeah, just like, yeah, impressive stuff. How'd you do that?
I mean, I spent like 3 or 4 years working with Roland a lot, and I feel like really when they have to do those trade shows like a NAMM or something, you're just sitting with a piece of gear for like hours and hours and hours, and you get so bored that you just start doing stuff. And that's kind of how I've gotten into anything electronic or playing guitar or singing or whatever, just because that was so boring that I had to do something else. So every time I'd go to a new show, I would get new instruments, and then I would just learn how to use them at the show. And then after the show,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, okay, I understand another thing. And then I would just keep adding them to the looper because it was usually just me. So who wants to listen to just drums for 8 hours? No one. So I was like, okay, if I just accompany myself, then that's more exciting. So that was kind of
Yeah.
why I started doing it. And then now I just do it because it's fun.
Hell
Yeah.
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 Well, and
That's
that really
cool.
came, yeah, that's super cool. And it really came along in a great time because I'd really say, like, right around the time that you described starting to do that, like, looping really blew up and took off as kind of its own art form in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many possibilities with it. And I also feel like, not to be like cynical, but the budgets for artists are getting, smaller and smaller. So the more that you can do and be self-sufficient with, the better. And that was another thing, like being in LA, it was cool, but everyone I always wanted to play with was out of town or busy. It's like looping
Mm-hmm.
is a great way to just be like, okay, well, I can at least
Yeah.
play something, and feel like I'm making a full amount of music without playing to tracks or pre-recording stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Nice.
you're building this whole vocabulary of, just not just rhythmic parts, but arrangements and melody. And it's really this whole new world beyond just being a drummer. You're like kind of a multi-instrumentalist and in some ways kind of composing little pieces, and like writing, little songs or whatever they turn out to be. And I think it just broadens your horizons as a player when you really get into that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's been really nice to be uh, a musician, like a complete musician, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to like for a long time I just played drums and I didn't sing or write music. I just only
Serious?
yeah. I started singing when I was 21.
Oh, you're such a good singer. Jeez.
Didn't start
Golly.
Yeah.
didn't start that way.
Took practice?
Well, so what happened with that was I wanted to be a jazz drummer. That was like my thing. But then in college I was in a songwriting class. And so I would write all these songs that I didn't know. I didn't know music theory, so I would just like play stuff on the piano and then have all my like friends that could play things come and interpret what was happening. And then I would, have all these different singers that I knew. And then we started a band and we were playing out at these local bars. And on the day of our like second show, our singer was like tripping really hard on something and she couldn't remember, like she couldn't sing any of the songs. And I had written all the songs, so I just started singing. And then, yeah, it was like 8 years ago. And now here we are.
And that happened
That's
at a
cool.
gig?
Yeah, it happened at the gig.
That's so wild, kid.
It was
That's so
it was
wild.
really cool because I was just playing drums and singing, and it was like nothing. It just happened. Like it wasn't like I practiced it or anything. It was just like happening, which was to me like the cool thing was I had played drums for so long that I think that was why that was able to happen. And my singing was terrible. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
really bad. Like it sounded like I was like trying to be Nora Jones, but like had one too many somethings, and I was just like,
Oh, okay.
it was just really bad. But it was just like I think like that taught me the thing I've just kind of been going with my whole life is like just force yourself to do it, and you'll probably be able to do more than you would think you could, and then even if it's bad, you will probably get better. If it doesn't get better, then maybe stop. But like as long as it's getting better, just keep doing it.
That's so
Sure.
real. That's a process for everything in life,
Yeah.
honestly. Just keep
Yeah.
keep at it. As our Scheimer would say, adapt or die.
Yes. Yeah. We had John Scheimer on a couple episodes ago, and he works for Numbskull shows, and he's like an old school like punk promoter guy, and his tour managed a bunch of different prominent punk bands, and that's his whole mentality is adapt or die, like not getting stagnant and stuck in any particular area in life, and not getting complacent. And really that's, kind of the story of so many successful
Successful people
including
too.
successful
For
people.
example,
Sorry.
my personal idol, Sir Sean Connery, rest
Sean
in
Connery,
power.
of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
but
pleasure's all mine, Moneypenny. Sorry.
yes.
All right, I'm done.
But you always catch me if I ever slip or get the
I
slightest bit
stab
of
him right
tongue
as
tied.
soon as he gets a
Oh
single
yeah,
thing.
keeps me
Because
on
you
my
honestly,
toes.
because you speak so well and so clearly all the time. And when I start to talk, it's like stutters and likes and stuff. It's like the ghost of Sam Kinison type shit. I'm trying to ask a question. It's all random and shit. Anyway, I think it's time to actually go ahead and hit the button on the first proper segment of Origin Story. Isn't it time for Origin
Yes.
Story?
I think
We
it
have
is. I think it's time for that. So, and you were starting to
We were in
touch
it.
on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
we were in
yeah. But so you originally are from Indiana and you made the move out to LA.
Yes.
And so I was doing some research just about kind of where you've come from and like kind of your background before you moved. And I was finding some stuff, but not like a whole picture. So I kind of want to get like your mindset of where you were at as a player in college and what you were doing, and then kind of taking me through what you were thinking and feeling like when you decided like I'm gonna take the leap and move across the country.
Yeah, well, like most decisions I make, there's not a lot of thinking. So, I mean, that's kind of how it all started. I don't like to think about stuff, I just like to do it and then figure it out after that. And that was kind of how I started in music, and that's kind of how I moved to LA. But when I was like super young, there was like a musical aptitude test. We had one of every instrument in a room, and then you got to like try to play each one, which was hilarious because like a violin, like who's gonna pick that up and sound amazing? I'm sure someone,
Yeah.
but it wasn't me. So I played, I think, French horn and drums, and she was like, "You should really play the drums, but like I guess French horn is okay too." And I was like, "Cool, French horn then." And so I played French horn for a while, and then I switched to drums and started as a jazz like drummer in sixth grade. I was lucky to have like a really good middle school director that taught us jazz, and that continued all the way through college. And that's kind of what we were just talking about, was like that my dreams or ideas of what I wanted to do shifted as I started writing songs and singing. And I feel like the band I started with, that group of people I was telling you guys about, like just my friends, we stayed together for like 5 or 6 years in the Midwest through college and afterwards. And we were super tight, and we were playing at I'm actually in Indiana now. I'm here like hanging close to family during this shit crazy time.
Yeah.
But right down the street from where I'm staying right now is the bar we played in, where we got like discovered by Bob Clearmountain, who's an engineer, like
Yeah, big guy.
especially for drums. Like he's like the dude.
For sure.
Didn't know that when I met him, and I told him to leave me alone because he was talking. He was at this dive bar because he was here for Sweetwater. My hometown is where Sweetwater is, and he was
Cool.
Oh,
there
nice.
speaking at Sweetwater.
Y'all
And
got my money.
yeah, it's just, I mean, I was there for a year. And it was. I'm not a salesperson,
Oh,
but it was cool. But he was there with his wife Betty, who owns Apogee, and they were at the Brass Rail, which is this divey. Everyone has a handlebar and like a beard such as yours.
they wish.
They wish it was that nice. They have an attempted beard.
Yeah. This is like, when I go out, I go like Jason Momoa with this shit. It's all braided, puka shells, you know. Like bones of my enemies, all that stuff gets woven in there and shit. But yeah, no, okay, it's like, so we're in that bar. I see this bar. Everybody's got the handlebars and the horn rim glasses and the t-shirts.
Well, everyone's like, yeah, like cool and kind of, like there's like a cool amount of like griminess, and it's our favorite place to play. And
Nice.
and there's these people that do not look like that.
Like the type.
They look nice. They're older than the rest of the crowd a little bit, and he's like, "Hey," like after the show, I'm like carrying my drums. He's like, "Hey, do you have a second?" I was like, "No," and
That's real.
"Oh, I gotta get this shit off the stage." And he was like, "Okay, well, here's my card." And I was like, "Whatever, dude." And I got home at night, and I like Googled his email, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Jesus, Jordan.
So, but then I emailed him, and I was like, "I'm so sorry. Like I didn't know, and I'm obviously familiar with your work, but
Yeah.
that was you." And Betty's amazing as well. And I was like, damn. And
For
from
real.
that point on, we just stayed in contact, and I would send him music, and I'd be like, "Here's what we recorded like in my living room. What do you think?" And he'd be like, "Great, I love it. Come to LA." And I'd be like, "No." And then finally, after a couple years, I was like, "Yeah, let's just go." So I told the band that we should just go, and then half of us went and half of us did not. We ended up
Wow.
recording with him, and it was really cool. Then the band, of course, blew up right after that. But two of us stayed in LA, and it's been such a great, like, it was a great way to get us there all together, and we've all stayed in touch and stuff. But that was kind of why I moved to LA, and what really got me out there was just like believing that he would, like, getting the chance to work with him would be worth it, and that if somebody like that thought we had potential to do something, that we should just go for it. And so we did. And even though it didn't work out that way, The gig I currently have is through him in like a very roundabout way. It was 5 years later, but he brought in a producer, Tony Berg, to work on
Mm-hmm.
one of the songs that I had with my band and him. And then Tony, 5 years after that song, recommended me to Eric Valentine, who is married to Grace Potter.
Yep.
And that's how it all worked. So, I mean, I have, the brass rail to thank for so many things.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is
That's
a
an
hell of
awesome
an
story.
origin story, my friend. That's dope.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I left
Um,
out some other parts, but like, I don't, it's a very weird winding thing. But part of what I do, like, always want to talk about, if there's ever other musicians watching, is like people think that there's this like path that you're supposed to take.
Sure.
And I just
Right.
don't think that anyone should ever feel like they're not doing something right. Because like I worked as sales for Sweetwater, and then I worked for Roland as like a clinician and an artist relations person, and I got so much shit for that from real musicians, and it was kind of this
Really?
constant thing of like, well, you can't sell out like that and expect that anyone will hire you. And I was like,
This feels like the same cats that always show up and want to fill a bag full of swag at the NAMM, though. You know what I mean?
yeah, they're like, but
Still
also
the same
do you have a
cats.
keyboard. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, like sell
That's
out. It's like
crazy.
just for getting a job at a gig working at a company, like that doesn't make any sense. Like where's the sellout in that? It's what, because you can eat today? Like why is that
I
why
mean,
is that a sellout?
that's like,
I
I've
don't.
heard so many different things about musicians, like, like professionals like yourself who got a real, got a real premium level gig, and the jobs they did before. There's cats like the National. All those guys did corporate jobs. I was like, aren't they fucking sellouts? No, because they're like my third favorite band. But, it's like if you're going to call fucking one thing the same thing, it's like, you know what I mean?
Well,
It seems a little
you
unfair.
can't make music. Like if you can't support yourself, you're not making music. Like you're trying to eat. Like it's not like I don't really understand the idea of like having to struggle if you have an opportunity not to do that. And I think,
Absolutely.
people should take whatever they can get. And I learned so much working
Right.
that job, and I learned so much about gear that shaped my thoughts on music and honestly prepared me for different gigs that I've had that needed
Yeah.
electronics or something. So, I mean, a lot of those comments would come from people that had worked those jobs or were in those music instrument jobs, like working
Oh.
for a company. I think there's like a lot of bitterness sometimes,
Oh, okay.
Because they
but
got like into a trap, you think, somehow with the job or something? Was that the perception they were pushing you, or?
I think some people do get trapped, and not just in music, but in everything. Like, I think it's easy to say, wow, this job, I had a corporate card. I was flying around the country, but I was like vacuuming Guitar Centers half the time. So it's like
Oh,
good
I
and
love
bad.
vacuuming, bro.
But it is comfortable and it's secure and it's stable and the people are great. So I think there are people that maybe went that route instead of pursuing music and then maybe regretted it, after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely that, and it's
That's real.
because and I get that part of it because you've seen that, like at least on my side of things, on sort of the tech audio stagehand behind the scenes world. There's people that get into it and they stay in that world either because they like it more than playing, or they end up sort of that it's making them more money, so they end up doing that, but they still want to be musicians. And so you meet some people who can be kind of bitter sometimes about either opportunities they haven't gotten or jobs that they haven't received yet, or whatever it is, gigs that they're working towards. But going about your life that way is the total wrong approach, instead of just being appreciative of what you have and the kind of people that you're around and people that you get to meet. And it's the same thing with working for those companies. The amount of people that you're able to meet, run into, make connections with. I'm sure great people that you get a chance to work with. Like that's something to be super appreciative of.
Yeah, and I think it's like a very human thing to take whatever situation you're in and not like it. Or like to gradually
Real.
over time, just be like, well, this isn't what I wanted, or this isn't like
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't appreciative of my job. I was meeting like Bruno Mars and I was like, fuck this, I want to play. And it's like, what are you,
Right.
like, what is happening? Because like
Mm-hmm.
3 years before that, I would have been like, oh my God. And I think it's just this like, at least for me, there's a kind of this underlying cynicism and like tendency to continue to want more and more and more and more, which I think you sometimes need, but also it can be, if you don't control it, it can be like a super toxic thing. And I've certainly like been guilty of that in my life. And this pandemic has really forced me to think like about these things and like why is it that I'm always what is it that I actually want? Because I feel like it will never be enough, you know?
Yep.
Like it's not the
Oh
give.
yeah,
It's not the
yeah.
give.
The stark reality is like the best thing to do is to change your expectation of that. I think that would because I think that no matter what you're striving for in any walk of life, it's like it won't be what you imagined. I have yet to experience one goddamn thing in life that people said it'd be like this, and I'd be like, wasn't, isn't, and doesn't. Close, kind of. Your description's similar, but not the way I went through it. So you know what I mean? I think that's part of that.
Yeah, it's that
You know,
feeling.
it's like
Well, have you guys seen Soul, that movie?
it's in my watch list on the Disney Plus right now. I hadn't started it though.
Same here.
It's
Yeah.
really good. I think like this isn't a spoiler, but the theme of the movie is like kind of like there's a point where he gets to a gig. It's a great gig. And at the end of the gig, he's like, huh, I don't feel any different. This was like my dream. And I thought I would feel different. All my problems would go away. And then
Yeah.
they didn't. And I feel like that's kind of like a very powerful thing that I've realized, like getting to
Mhm.
with Grace, that is my like dream gig. And I love it and I have so much fun, but it doesn't change, everything else about your life.
Yeah.
It's
All the
just
things
that-
you had to deal with before that. Yeah.
And I think, we kind of got off on like a tangent. My computer just turned on. It's the spirit.
AI,
I don't know what happened.
cover your ears and your mouth. Don't let the nanobots in.
But yeah,
Sorry, I'm Captain Paranoia on the team here. That's my role.
no, we have a Google Home thing,
Oh, word.
Oh,
and
I used to have those too.
I'm
Do you
very-
like it?
I'm very paranoid about it. I think
Everything you say is telling it's connecting to your phone and cycling through. Like right now, with my phone on the desk, things we talked about later are going to pop up in my Google feed for sure. Like meat is going to pop up because Jesse said meat like 5 or 6 times. And like something about like meat or the butcher will be on my Google feed. I've watched it happen.
Right.
Have you guys ever seen it happen? It happens
Oh, yeah.
like in real time
Yeah.
now. So I just want to tell the nanobots to suck it real quick. And anyway, back to our conversation.
But
Go
yeah,
away, Skynet.
that was like the end of my tangent.
That was
well-
a good tangent, though.
yeah. Well, and actually, I wanted to kind of talk about that for a little bit because this is something I've brought up in a few different podcasts now, to where that's been my whole thing for this past year as well. Because I've never been a cynical person, but I don't know, just being in that environment to where like you're making your living in through music some way, somehow, whether you're playing, you're doing what I was doing with like teching, your whatever it is, or you want to be doing something and you're working towards it, it creates a hunger and you need to be hungry to pursue it. But you can get lost in that and not really appreciating what you have. And then in some people that manifests in like kind of cynical stuff about, not having certain things that you want. And then when everything's put on pause, then you kind of have to take a step back and examine everything and go, oh, well, what really makes me happy? Why do I really feel this way? And exactly what you're talking about. You have to, all that stuff that comes with success and getting like even close to your dream gig at all, it's just, oh, well, even if you get that, there's still stuff that you have to work out within you and stuff that, you'll work on for yourself. And just because you hit that point doesn't mean it's like, oh, it's over, I've made it. There really is no making it, really. It's kind of just this journey that you're on, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally
Mhm.
just one part of who you are. And I think that musicians tend to have their art or their music or their pursuit of that like define them. Like I know that I used to think that way, like I'm a musician and I'm a drummer. I'm like doing this, I'm going for it. And that was like people would ask me about myself and that was like I'm a drummer. And then
Yeah.
during this pandemic, it's like, well, no. I mean, yes, you are a drummer, but like, what do you do? Like, that can't
Yeah.
be that's not who you are. And I feel like it's really crazy because for so long you hustle and you are grinding and you're always thinking in those terms and what's next and kind of how to sell yourself a little bit. And then when that's all gone, you're just left with like who you actually are. And that like
Yeah.
really freaked me out for the first 6 months of this thing.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Literally the exact same. That was a lot of,
Yeah.
yeah,
For
just
him, we've
whatever.
unpacked that a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever wall I had built up around me, like some sort of pseudo Roger Waters concert, was just
Yep. There
slowly
goes the
over the
hammer.
6 months taking the bricks down, and then it was like, oh, this is who you are, and yeah, it was scary, or it was a lot of stuff of like, yeah, I've been kind of thinking about this, but it was easy to like shove that stuff in the back of your mind for a long time. So like,
Yeah.
why is it that I have this weird feeling all the time? And it's like, oh, you were kind of dealing with weird anxiety, depression stuff that you were just kind of pushing away. And then not having anything to distract you is like, oh yeah, you should probably like start meditating on a regular basis. You should probably
Yeah.
start like exercising consistently, and just things where it's like, yeah, you need to take care of yourself. And I wasn't really doing that before. I was just kind of going and going and going. And it caught up with me in a weird way. And it didn't happen instantly. It took like 5-6 months into where I really had an epiphany of like, oh, why do I feel so bad? Oh, well, this is why, and you got
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
sit down and examine that stuff. And otherwise it just goes unchecked. And we'll be better off going through this than just, if things kept going on the way that they were going, really, in a way.
I think so too. And I think like those having that distraction, having that constant motion is what I was like living off of and like
Yeah.
constantly searching for. It was like part of my motivation was like I'd just run away from myself. And I feel
Yeah.
like I like, the pandemic
Yes.
happened and I was like running and then I just like, oh wow, I like do still have anxiety. Crazy. I thought it was like
Yeah.
gone miraculously. I was like, oh, it just like
Yeah.
it just went away.
Yeah.
But no, I
Yeah.
was just
Nope.
drinking a lot and like, on a bus
Yeah.
every night and it was really fun. But, then you go home and you're like, oh yeah, it's not fixed. It's just like, another distraction and
Yeah.
there's no distraction anymore.
Right. No, and that was my
No
whole mindset
distractions.
too. I had literally told my coworkers like stagehand stuff because I was starting to do more road gigs. I was like, I just want to get a solid road gig and then just leave society over here, and I'll just be in this little bubble going across the country, and then everybody else can deal with all these other problems. I'm just going to live in my own touring world and be fine, and then hang out with my people, and that's it. And that was like end of 2019, like going into this year. And going into this year, I mean, this year, it's January, so I'm still in that old
It's still
year
2020 to
mindset.
me. It's
He's
not
been
Yeah.
traveling through time again. I told him to stop messing with that because of the paradox effect, and he just
Right.
Jesse's wonderful, but he's a little stubborn sometimes, and he loves going back and forth. Like 6 months and back is like not really even. What's the point of that, bro?
Yeah.
We did not
Right.
build the time machine for that. We built it to go kill Hitler, dude.
Hey, you got the DeLorean, man. You got to come over to my house and pick me up. We've already talked about
I had to put that
this.
shit in the shop though. We'll talk about that. DeLorean is fucked up right now.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's just weird because, and then this year was supposed to be my biggest touring year of like actually doing, and I've talked about this on the podcast before too. So sorry, regular listeners, if you're tired of me bringing it up, but
Oh, they
it's,
love you. Citizens are like, tell it, Jesse, tell it.
yeah. So I was supposed to be going out on the bus doing the teching thing, like as an opening act for like a big tour, and it was like the same thing, like my dream gig. Like we would have like done some really big venues and going to Canada, and I felt like I had worked all of my life to get to this point, and it was going to be this hugely validating thing of like, oh yeah, I'm not crazy for pursuing this. It's like I knew that like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then so when all of it went away, and now it's kind of like, yeah, I think we'll reschedule this. We'll see, based on what's going to happen. that was hard to deal with. But then also, like, I couldn't go out and tour with my band either and book like shows where I'm playing at, dive bars all over the country. Like, no, I couldn't do that either. And so it was that same thing, just this whole process of like, well, what are you really about? And then probably for the first month, like kind of avoiding that and like really going hard on practicing and doing other things. And then after a while, just losing motivation to do that. And then kind of getting back into the flow of things and practicing again. And like this whole cycle of like, well, who are you at? Or where are you?
Who are you
Who
at?
are you? Where? Yeah. Who are you at? And yeah, it's been interesting, but I'm extremely grateful for it, and I've actually made some really solid friendships and connections over this with talking to people and people that I was kind of keeping in touch with before, and so I'm really grateful for where I'm at now, and actually really appreciative for everything, and in a much better place about life than where I was before. So I totally relate to everything that you're talking about right now, and that's just been me this whole past year.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of in this similar weird, like, I don't know if you guys saw that there was a point, like, there were all these things that just kept happening, and then it would just, everyone would be doing it at the same time, but no one had talked about it. Like, everyone was making banana bread for like 1 month. It was like,
Yeah.
why is everyone making? And then I made it because I was like, well, everyone else is making banana bread. I was making banana bread, and I feel like
Why
we're all
haven't I been making it?
it's like a weird, like we're going through the stages of grief together, and it's like everyone's reaching
Makes sense.
points at the same ish time, and it's really weird. I have a friend that I was on tour with Grace with, and we talk every single day on this video chat app thing, which is like, I hate that app with literally anyone else except for her, but we
Right.
just send each other video messages like all the time, and it's interesting to see like we were kind of going through these stages like at the same time, and it was really weird because you have that moment of ignoring it and still trying to run and like still have the hustle mindset, and then you have the moment I didn't touch drums for 4 months. After
Yeah.
that I just stopped and I was like, who cares, this is stupid. And then the moment after that of like, well, why don't I want to play music if I supposedly love music? Why isn't that what I'm like turning to? And then the realization of just like doing it again to just because you love doing it and not for some other thing. But it took so long to not make music with a goal in mind. And like it kind of depressed me that that was how my brain has shifted to thinking about music as like something you get or achieve, or like that is quantifiable in some way. And I feel like I've tried to get back to like just playing and practicing just to be better at, just to be able to speak like easier through my instrument and write music just to share it and write it, not to like tour with it or hope people see it or what, like
Yeah.
like it's such a hard thing to like get out of my brain. But I think without this pandemic, a lot of us would still just continue, like you said, just keep running, and at the end of the day or when we're older just be like, wow, this was kind of an empty, like I got everything I wanted, but it was sort of why, like
Yeah.
what came of it? Because
Yeah.
I didn't love it.
Dude.
If I was miserable the whole time, why am I doing it?
Yeah, dude, I'm so glad you just brought that up because I felt the same way. It was like a depressing thing of, well, yeah, I love music, but why do I have zero motivation to play? I felt almost like ashamed, like I didn't want to tell anybody else, because if music is your thing and that's what you love, why do you not want to play? And you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was going through too. And yeah, it's taken a whole year, coming up on it, of basically within the last 3 or 4 months, I haven't played or practiced necessarily for a specific goal in mind. I've just been playing to have fun and just playing consistently. And I don't know, I feel like I'm playing and sounding better because there's this mental pressure that's taken away from it. So even the stuff like when I have been working on, timing or new concepts or like practicing with a metronome, anything like that, it's more fun
I'll
for
be
me
right
now.
back.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I feel like it needs to be talked about. Otherwise, then it just in general, if you keep that stuff inside or you don't share it, then there's other people that have gone through that and they don't, they feel like they're kind of alone in feeling that way.
Yeah, and I think some people have dealt with it differently, and it seems to be a common theme of musicians that were kind of on the brink or just getting their career really started that feel the most like what we're talking about. Because everyone
Mm-hmm.
I know that's more established or has gone farther and it stopped for them, they're dealing with it a little bit better than I
Mm-hmm.
think the people like us that were just getting to really wanted to go. Because I feel like
Yeah.
they've I think they've already gone through a lot of this
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
the years. And then like for us it's like, ah, like work so hard and I'm here and then it's like, oh, what the fuck? It's gone. Like it's like it's
Yeah.
gone. It's
Right.
just like evaporated out of thin air. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's cool. I think it's like, I think everyone gets there hopefully at some point somehow, whether through doing it a
Mm-hmm.
lot or through something like this, which I hope never happens again. Um, but music is such a weird thing and it's such a beautiful thing, and I'm happy to actually appreciate it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the exact same way.
Nice.
Um,
Well, yeah, what y'all
yeah.
went through was like a serious setback. It was like a loss. So y'all had to go through that dab to shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
had to go
And
through the anger and the bargaining and all that shit. I don't have as much on the ball, and 2020 and the pandemic was not my worst year, but the two preceding it certainly were. So it's there's perspective to be had all around, but it's definitely, I think you're right. Like other people are feeling it differently, but it really affected you guys because you're right on that cusp of something really changing in terms of career wise, which is what we're working towards, you know.
yeah.
yeah. Well, and you were actually, from going through your IG and preparing for this, you were in the middle of I think between tour legs, and I had seen a video of you kind of shredding through. I think it was Lion the Beast and the Beat, and
Yeah.
doing a drum solo at the end of it, which was fucking rad to watch. But like you were like at least getting a taste of it, so that must have been kind of hard too, just kind of getting pulled from the middle of that whole experience.
Yeah, it was really cool though, because I started on with Grace in July of 2019. So we kind of
Yeah.
we did a lot of dates, fly dates, not like a bus tour, but we did so many
Mm-hmm.
dates. Basically, all of 2019 was working with her and the band, and that was awesome. And then the tour, we had an extremely long, like 2 months run with no stops, no breaks. We had like a few 2 days off. We would do 5 days on, 2 days off, just over and over and over again. Um, and then we took a 2 week break, and we had just flown for our first date, and it got canceled. And that was when this all started. So it was like a weird stopping point because you were like revving up to do it again. Like you were like, okay, we're gonna go out. But I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for the 2 months. Like what at the time seemed like a grueling, very long, like intense run. Very
Right.
thankful that we just went balls to the wall because I got a lot of shows done and I had a lot of
Yeah.
like memories, and we got a lot of time on the road that kind of sustained me through, all the other bullshit. Was just thinking about all those times that we had, and like getting to go back to it at some point will be really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're on the subject of Grace Potter and her awesomeness and her rock and roll balls out sort of attitude, what was the process of like? Well, for real though, like
Yeah, her
Yeah.
balls are always
discover.
out.
Well, she rocks harder than so many bands and people out there, and I really don't think she gets the full credit for it, or like she gets mentioned in as many categories. And now she's kind of moving into more of the sort of solo songwriter thing. But for me, like some of the stuff that she's done in like rock is really like, no, you need to listen to this if you haven't, and it's really just punchy and it's got so much swagger to it. And seeing you get that gig was a really cool thing, and seeing you move from doing the product demos and all of that to touring and getting that, it was just so cool to see because it was, such an awesome opportunity. And what was the process of, you kind of mentioned how you got introduced to that, but what was the actual process for preparing for the gig, auditioning, and then kind of, your fly dates, and just kind of if you can take us behind the scenes of how that all went down.
Yeah. So I think an important thing to like preface that with is that right before, well, not right before, but a few months before I got the call for this, I was supposed to be touring and like playing with Seal all the time,
Hmm.
and played one gig, and it was like kind of traumatic because it like didn't end well, and like I didn't get fired, but I didn't get called back. Neither did like the bass player, and like it was just like a really weird thing. It was one of those things where you're set up, okay, we're going to be on tour, we're going to be doing this, you're going to be part of this, like you guys are all, this is my crew, and then it was just like blew up within like that one date. It was like,
Oh
Oh,
wow.
golly.
which I think it happens a lot, but
Hmm.
as you're going through it, it feels like the end of the world. A
Yeah.
little, um,
Yeah.
and that like fucked me up a little bit because I didn't prepare for the gig like I should have. Like I didn't come as confident as I should have, and I was not in a great place like mentally when I got the email from Eric. It was just an email that was like, "Hey, this is Eric Valentine. Do you know like who Grace Potter is? Like we want a drummer that can sing." And I was like, "This shit's not real." He didn't just email my Gmail account and say, because I like love Grace Potter. Like I
Yeah.
was a huge fan. And so I took that gig very seriously. So I practiced for hours and
Yeah.
hours to get the vocal parts down and the drumming stuff because it was super involved. I don't know if you
Right.
like the new record, but like Daylight record is like very vocally. She had Lucius on it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's lots
Yep.
of that. So the failure at the gig previous to that helped me really be super intense preparing for Grace.
Yeah.
And then I think I just all I did was practice, and then we had like a meeting at Barefoot
Yeah.
Studios,
Yeah.
and we just played, and it was just like not a full band. It was just like Eric on guitar and Grace on various things, and me on drums and the bass player Curtis. And everyone was
Oh
kind of
wow.
like didn't know, like none of us really knew what was going on, and like it was so
Yeah.
like almost like I felt very frantic. Because there was just me singing backgrounds for like a choir. So I'd be like, ah, there was no,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Right.
shit, I'm never gonna get hired.
Yeah.
And I was just really freaked out. But then they called me like a couple of days after that. Like I guess that was an audition type of thing.
Hmm.
They were like, cool, we'd love to have you, and like you need to not hit the drums so hard, but like hit them hard though, but not. And then they had like Eric is a drummer, and he's like a great drummer and a great producer. So he
Hmm.
had all these like he was like, here we're gonna work on this and that, and it was cool. We did rehearsals, and then we basically just did the whole year. We did I think our first gig was like Martha's Vineyard, and then we went on a Bon Jovi cruise, which was insane. It was everything you think it'd be.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Which
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
thought was amazing because it was like the weirdest thing ever, and Grace is so funny. She's just like no bullshit ever, and I think
Yeah.
a funny pairing of artists. But it was just like everything we did, everybody gets along so well, and the band really gels really well on stage and off
Right.
stage. And Grace is someone that will, cook you pasta after the show and invite everybody over to her house when we're in LA. And it's just a very like some gigs you do and they're gigs and you go home and like
Hmm.
you don't. It's not no one hangs out.
Right.
It's always kind of a bummer. But this is not that. So it was very like family vibes, and it still is. Like
Yeah.
we have a group thread that we all talk to each other on, and we all talk to each other independently, and like we got to celebrate her son's birthday on a Zoom, and so it's just a cool like that was kind of how everything felt, was like part of a family. So that was extra cool because I prefer some people don't like that. They don't like their work to be that mixed up with like personal relationships, but I think it
Hmm.
makes it all better.
Yeah. Oh, I feel the exact same way with that. In that environments I like to work in are that sort of, family, brotherhood, kind of environment, whether it's with a bunch of crew people or whatever. And I've seen that in certain bands that I've worked individual shows for, even just as a stagehand, where you see how the crew is in the band and everybody is this one unit, and you go, "Oh, like that's awesome!" And everybody kind of looks out for each other, and I think ultimately it makes the work better than just showing up and feeling like you're clocking into a job.
Yeah, and I mean, with her, the live show that we did, there was just no rules. Like, there was no, we didn't even know what the hell was happening like half the time. Like,
Right, right.
we were learning new songs up until the last day of the run. We were just learning new songs, like at sound check, and then just like sort of like playing them and mashing them up with other things and going into like psych jams out of nowhere. And like, it was a very
Right.
like fluid experience of like, it was like real rock and roll. There was no click track, there was no tracks, there was no anything. It was just like Grace screaming in
Oh,
the talk back like play like Bonzo, and then just be like just playing until she
yeah,
screams something else, and then you know
yeah.
it's like you never know what's gonna
Oh,
happen. So knowing the people makes it a lot, makes that happen more.
yeah. Well, and that
Mhm.
I'm glad that somebody's doing that at such a prominent level, and that just warms my heart to hear everything that you just said. Like there needs to be more of that because yeah, everybody can play and let's have fun. You know, that's what it there needs to be a little bit of spontaneity and danger in there and in that like yeah, this is a new song and hey, we might improvise this section or hey, you know this song that you've been listening to since 2012? Yeah, well there's this middle cool live, psychedelic jam section that we're going to add in there that we're only going to do at this show. Like that's that stuff that I love in bands, and that's why I love old school music so much. And so just yeah, that's so awesome to hear that that's the way that it goes down over there.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's very cathartic, and she's such an amazing singer that we could all fuck up and nobody would know.
Yeah.
She'll just scream over the top of it, and people be like, "Oh my God!" So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
that happened many. She covered up a lot of my shit because she would just scream. It was like, wow. So I have a
Yeah,
lot.
that's awesome.
It's a great gig,
That's
but
awesome.
I hope you guys get the chance to see it. I hope we finish that tour.
That would be
Yeah,
sick.
no,
Yeah.
she's been on my list of people to see for a while. Just
Fucking for
seeing
real.
yeah, either seeing live videos of her songs or even snippets of her playing, and it's like, oh wow, this is great, and this is right up my alley. And been covering her songs for years. When I was doing like a top 40 cover band, and we were playing bars and different private parties and stuff like that. We always had a couple of Grace Potter songs in the set. Lion the Beast and the Beat was one.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, that one was just that one was more for us, I think, than everybody else because usually people would want to hear like pop stuff. And
Yeah.
so because Grace Potter kind of falls into that category, all right, we're going to break from like Lady Gaga for a second and Katy Perry, and we're going to do this song. Hope you like this. And people responded to it well, but we would always get asked like, oh, hey, who is this? And it's like, oh, yeah, Grace Potter, check that out. And when we played more rock crowds or more of like the dive bar thing, people would be digging it and rocking out. So it was always a fun one to have in the set. And same thing with Ooh La La was another one we would always have in the set. Yeah,
That's cool.
that's a that's a fun one too. Um, yeah, and I was actually since we're talking about drumming and rocking out and all of that, I noticed that your typical setup for when you do the looping stuff is kind of the opposite of what your classic rock kit would be, and that you've got sample pad there and you've got no toms. I don't know if this is your setup every time, but this is something I've noticed in a few of your videos. You've got like kick, snare, floor tom, then you've got sample pad, got a couple other things going on and no tom. So can you like kind of break down how you crafted your gear and your setup the way that it is generally and kind of how that differs from maybe your Grace rig?
Yeah. So the looping kind of like vibe, that's like still something I am constantly changing and messing with. I always love having the sample pad instead of a rack tom, because I
Yeah.
think less is more in terms of drums, just usually. And so kind of
Yeah.
just replacing it forces me to have less bullshit options, because you can't just do some random ass fill on an SPDSX because it will sound terrible.
Mhm.
So it kind of forces me to have it there. It forces me to think more compositionally rather than free and playing whatever. And for looping, I feel like that works better, to have it be very solid and very predictable almost in your own mind. And so I kind of just started adding stuff based on what the songs would require. So like I just did a couple songs at Sweetwater that like involved this setup, and I needed harmonies, so I added like a harmonizer pedal, and then I needed everyone to be able to loop, so we added everyone has things going into a mixer going into the looper, and then it just, like quickly snowballed out of control from that point. And then we started putting like the bass into the like there's one bass in the looper and one bass being mic'd live, and then there's a trumpet and there's like percussion and there's 8,000 mics going into this mixer. And so I just keep evolving it based on what I need for each song. And I haven't yet found something that won't work or something that can't work. So that's kind of cool. Like that's a kind of a cool thing about using the loopers and like technology is like you can just keep like there's not really like an end to what you can do and how much you can change it. And so I just keep changing it. And I don't really have like a specific setup, which is cool because each time I go to record something with that setup, it's anyone's guess as to what's happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. All of those videos where like you're messing around with the Alabama Shakes song "Don't Want to Fight," which was awesome. Like I love the use of the sample pad in there. That was super cool. And even with the stuff that you just did for Sweetwater, like I feel like you've got a real mind and ear for experimentation, and you're really like you really get a sense of your creativity and how you're shaping all of those pieces and how you're crafting your drum parts and how everything's looped in there. And it's just really interesting to hear. And like, does that come from a specific influence? Does that just come from just kind of the experience you've gathered with playing over the years? And like, how did that sort of develop?
I feel like it kind of developed from all of it came from like a songwriting perspective or like I think a lot of times like as more of a songwriter than a drummer. Even when I was just playing drums, I think I always thought of melody first. That's like because I learned everything by ear and not with reading, which I regretted in college. I never did music. But I think it was cool because it's like, that's how I think of everything. So when I try to loop, I'll always try to just do the simplest possible thing, like the bare minimum of what it needs to be. And I think that's been a cool thing. Because when I first started trying to loop, my process was like, let's make it really crazy and like weird and like, just like impress people with how I can play in 13. It's like, okay, I don't think anyone cares. So I don't care. I scroll right past that shit. I see someone playing in 13 and I'm like, great. And we're just gonna move on from that. I want to hear something that sounds good. I want to hear something I can sing back or clap along with, and that's kind of been my mindset for a while. Is just like I want to just play stuff that people will remember and that people would dance to or relate to in some way. And I want to be able to pull it off and not try to like make these complicated. I like can't really play guitar, so I'm not gonna sit here and be like, what?
Well, I mean, I think Davey and I would beg to differ on that, but sure, go ahead.
But that's because I only play what I can play. I don't play anything else.
Well, I know a lot of cats that play what they can play, but they don't play as good as you, though. So there's that.
Right.
Well, they're like, I got the 2 chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm like, yeah, no, you got some licks, dude. Yeah, that's what I was setting up and then doing the Sweetwater thing. I was like, oh, that guitar lick is fire. And then setting it down and the drums start kind of layering underneath as you guys start getting going. I'm like, oh, that's fucking sick. I was like, that's honestly what it's all about. It's like the guitar in its own is great, but the idea of like you layering these elements and feeling it come together in the moment, that's what people are really tuning in for. They're never going to want to see anyone. They're just like, they don't want to watch me tapping because I don't care about my tapping either. But if it's in the context of a song where we're all doing something like that together, everybody's going to feel that. So I think that's 100% what you said.
Yeah, that the feel is everything. Like the vibe. I think that is the influence. Like you were asking what the influence is. I think my influence comes from like soul music, Bill Withers, and like James Brown, and all that kind of stuff was what I grew up playing drums along to. It was like I'd go to school and play jazz, whoopee, and then I would go to my drum lessons and play James Brown. Like, yeah, this is better. So
jazz whoopee. It feels like a really old time shit or something. Like before they did the Charleston, they did the jazz whoopee.
No, I mean I was in a ragtime band. I was in a ragtime band for like 4 years.
Damn,
That was my main gig in college, other than my band, was a touring ragtime band.
Did you guys wear like the suits and everything with the little hats?
Oh. Well, they did. You
had a different ensemble.
I opted out of that, but
you just dressed like yourself.
I just wore like business casual.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there was a banjo, there was like the whole thing, and that taught me a lot. It was not the style of music that I play now, but there's a lot of New Orleans. Like I love Stanton Moore, so it was very kind of weird. They'd always yell at me for not playing like the woodblock or the cowbell, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that though.
Yeah.
So it was like a pretty fun experience, but I feel like that also is about groove, and that's also about feel. And I think all of the music that I've ever loved and played is just about if it feels good. And I think if it doesn't, then I don't know what's happening.
Right. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head again for me. That's growing up. It was all that stuff. It was soul music. It was Motown, and same thing. Kind of rediscovering that again in college, but going in deeper on that. And it was James Brown and Bill Withers, like you mentioned, Larry Graham as a bass player. The Sly and the Family Stone stuff, all of that, and it just having that foundation. It's like, yeah, that's your bar. It's like, does this sound good and feel good? And you can make it as crazy as you want to be, but it's got to start at that place of like, does it sound good and feel good? All right, let's build out from there. And just starting with the essentials first like that is super critical, I think.
Yeah, there's always room to go insane. There's always like, it will always get there.
Yeah.
Start there though, you have nowhere to go.
So I'm not a drummer, but I do want to ask sort of a drummer question, in that like when it does start to go somewhere, what's your go-to I wouldn't necessarily say chops, but like when it's going beyond just pocket playing, like what's the kind of stuff you like to add in there? I've heard a few things, but I'd like to get more of your point of view on it.
I really love playing jazz, and I know I said jazz whoopee.
I'm making a fucking t-shirt, partner. That shit is baller. Have you heard the jazz whoopee? I'm fucking into it. It's like Boardwalk Empire in my mind right now.
Yeah.
That's totally. Bushimi's up here like, yeah.
Yeah. Cheers. Good shit.
Yeah, hey.
I feel like I'm like I don't know about y'all. I do believe in very little, but I think there's some sort of shit about past lives and the fucking like the 20s and shit, like the roaring 20s and shit. Like, yo, I lived through that, like for real.
Oh, there you go.
Like I was in a ragtime band back then and shit. You know what I mean? I guess I feel it. That's why I fuck with it. I'm a jazz like fanatic myself, so much like you. It's like I want to ask you about like who's your drum cats, because right now I'm like all bass and saxophone people. We can just list them all day, but who are you into drum wise?
Drum wise, oh man. Well, this kind of goes with both of your questions, because when shit gets crazy and when things get improvisational, and that's part of what I love about the Grace gig and about jazz gigs, is like when you reach that moment where everyone's in like the flow of things and everyone is just like trancing out. It's like I don't think about what I play, and I don't know fills. Like I don't practice fills. I've never learned how to play fills. Like I just play the like feeling of what's happening, or like try to emulate. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of go for the like. I love Gene Krupa. I love Max Roach. I love Elvin Jones.
Nice.
Max Roach, my absolute favorite.
Joe
Nice.
Morello is obviously, yeah.
Joe Morello is like maybe one of my favorites of all time. Just he's so melodic.
Yes.
That's always like what I try to do. So like during these jams, these psychedelic things with Grace, it's like she sings something and I try to emulate it with the toms or like go off on like, complementary rhythms with whatever she's doing. But it's always like locked into whatever the melodic thing is, like whether it's Benny on the guitar,
Yeah.
he's a guitarist, or her. I just try to like complement and try to pull in some like song on the drums as opposed to just be like because that shit is boring.
Yeah.
And I think building is like if it's based in song and music and melody, people are gonna get more excited. Like it makes them so excited. I'll do the thing, you press into the drum and like do, and I'll play like the melody of a song, and every time people are like, that's what people respond to is like the melody and tonal changes. So I try to experiment with that a lot, and
Yeah.
then
It's
sometimes
funny. That's so amazing. That's such an insight, I feel like, because it's part of what watching you play is exciting because you're aware of those concepts. Those are deep musical concepts that a lot of musicians don't get into over time, even ones that are pretty good, let alone the listeners out there absorbing it. My point being, they don't know why they fucking love when you do that so much, as opposed to the it's like they think, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I've seen the other one. Well, it's like if it's executed perfectly, I do get excited by but the difference is what they didn't see is like the context of a drum is this to them. When you give it a voice like that, like an actual sense of particular pitch, yeah, they lose their shit because they're like, drums don't do that, do they? But it's like they do when you have the mindset that you have bringing what you have in terms of your abilities. When I hear you play, I'm a huge Grace Potter fan. I was like, your gig is impressive, but watching you play is the kind of shit I'm looking for when I'm looking through the internet to watch people, because it's your innate ability to create that sensibility that is meaningful. I mean, there's a lot of what you do is meaningful, but that's what gets me, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, everything you come up with, I'm just like, I'm done, because she knows how to do it. I mean, there's not a lot of people who do it that same way. And I've always been fascinated by the people who do sampling and like loop their parts and stuff. Do you know many of these other kind of there's a couple of songwriters who've been around in the 2000s like that? Are you into any of them at all, or like some of the people I'm talking about, like Meryl Garbus from Tune Yards? Y'all remember Tune Yards? If you fuck with public radio, you should remember Tune Yards. Tune Yards is dope. It's like her stuff is very Afrobeat influenced, and she does a lot of but she's also it's like she's a pretty sick drummer, but she's mostly a guitar player. She does a lot of vocal based stuff with her loops and stuff. It's almost like Bjork in a way. But I'm just curious because I mean I have always been a multi-instrumentalist since I started playing, basically, and I've always been really keen on the other ones. And when people start taking it to the next level and being like, oh, I'm just going to keep layering this stuff and give you a whole environment. I'm just I'm a fanboy for that shit. I was just wondering, this is just the thing you did because you had the time to kill, right? The looping pedal phenomenon.
Yes. And I had seen, I think the first people I saw really do it, I saw KT Tunstall play her stuff.
Yes.
I really love her.
Yeah, and I was like, what the fuck is happening here? Because that was before I even knew what looping was. And I was like, wow, that's some crazy stuff. She's doing all this by herself and it's insane. And then I saw Kimbra do some stuff that was I didn't know what was happening. Kimbra was just pressing things. And I was like,
how did I forget about Kimbra? Love you, Kimbra.
yeah, I think she was a big
She's dope
for the whole creating a vibe thing with the loop.
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah, she's ridiculous. So those they and it's cool that they're both women. They super were inspiring to me, getting into all this stuff.
I mean, women are kind of crushing it right now.
Women are
I don't want to brag on you guys, but y'all are crushing it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
No, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's the other funny thing. Most of these looping and the one person band phenomenons that I've found lately that I really like, they tend to be women. who are doing like pick up one instrument, hit it like Tash Sultana. She's another Australian person who I found.
Mm-hmm.
She had a Tiny Desk thing. Y'all fuck with Tiny Desk, right?
Yeah.
And her thing was like she used to busk on the streets and like I'm pretty sure she's from Melbourne, and she'd just be out there on the street with like a guitar and half a drum kit and just doing like what you do. She starts, but everybody's different. Like her style is cool, but I don't want to start comparing. But I'm like, what you're doing is ferocious, dude. Anyway, I get carried away because I'm very excited to have you on.
Well, I love talking. I like could talk. This might be an 8-hour podcast. I feel like I all
Going
day.
for the
I love
record books.
talking. I love talking about music even more. So it's kind of just like it's something I've missed a lot. Like during the pandemic, is just having
Yeah.
you go after the show to the bar and you talk for like till the bar closes.
Yes.
You get real nerdy and excited, and it's the best thing.
It's if you go back through almost all of our
a
episodes, that's
tag.
literally like a goober
That's a
I bring up.
tagline.
So the reason why this podcast started is because it's after gig hangs and
Yeah.
talking to a diner or a bar about music with your buddies. Why can't that be like that on a podcast? Like I literally like every episode I talk about that, and the fact that you just said that, and not me, is like yes, exactly.
That's pretty
It's like,
intense. That's
it's
great.
the thing.
I think we
Yeah.
had a full circle moment, folks. That's pretty tight.
Yeah. No, but dude, it is, aside from the actual playing and creating and the doing the thing, whatever the thing is, that's playing a show, writing a song, coming up with, me, I love pedals and experimenting with stuff on bass, so coming up with cool sounds. That's obviously first place. Really, really close second is the hanging out and talking with other creative people. Like that's my favorite part of the whole thing, because you get this exchange of ideas and information, or you just laugh for like hours talking about stuff and with people, and you can't beat it. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, and it's all connected, I think, too. Like, I think that is another thing that's hard, like at least for me, is like I do draw a lot of my energy and inspiration from other people, like from hanging out and talking to them and like interacting
Yeah.
with them and laughing. Like that is what kind of drives me forward in so many areas, and I feel like without it, it's bizarre. Like it's a weird, it's isolated. I mean, we're all in isolation, so it's literally isolated.
Yeah.
But it's also, you feel weird. And I think you brought up meditating earlier, and I think I have
Yeah.
really like come to love that and like love exercise, anything that gets me out of like the loop. Like, not to make a loop joke,
Mhm.
but like the one place I don't want to loop is in my brain, and that's feel like it's like pandemic has just been a fucking loop, It's like, well, every
Yeah.
day we just wake up and we say, what's going on?
Yeah.
And trying to break
I-
that, I think meditation is excellent, and exercise. And I bought a dog that you guys met earlier, and it's all been good.
A fine dog indeed.
Yeah, she's a great
She's
dog.
sweet.
She's weird, but she's good.
Yeah.
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 Well, it seems like I think you guys are the extroverts of the trio, though, right here. Because I gotta say that, like, I mean, Jesse well knows it's like if he books it, I will come. But the idea of like, and I do love the hang. I live for the people that I play with, honestly. Besides that, and my crazy ass family, that's about all I care about. But it's the pandemic has been a great time for me because it's just the way that it's affecting other people is actually the stress for me. I don't want to act like I'm some sort of super empathic person, but it is tough to watch people I care about go through something that I'm like, this is my routine. I mask a lot of what I'm going through all the time, and then trauma preceded the pandemic for me, and then everybody's like, oh, so I was going to school, finishing my degree, and now I got to stay home all the time. Oh, I get to fucking go on Zoom. I don't have to drive 90 miles to school and back like every day.
Right.
Look at all this money in my pocket. Who's talking about the
Yeah.
pandemic like it sucks? I'm like, I love this bitch. And then I graduated. It's like, cool, let's go get a job. And then it's like, you can't come to work. Nothing's open. And I'm like, fuck this pandemic. I hate everyone.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's been
You know.
good moments. There's been good things. Like I love wearing sweatpants. Amazing. I feel like that's been cool. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's my brother was gonna get married today. Like his
Oh,
wedding was today, and obviously it's not. But
Right.
those kinds of things are just so like, man, like can you imagine graduating college or high school and missing it, or like I feel really bad for like all of those people, let alone the people that like have children that they have to like try to work to make money and they're like kids. Like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do with your kids? You send them to school or like what the like? It's just kind of like a mess, and that
Right.
is definitely a heavy part of this too. Is just watching. Like, I feel very fortunate. Like, my husband has a job and he's working remotely, so we're okay. But like, so many of my friends that like don't have that and they're running out of savings and this shit's crazy. But it
Yeah.
definitely, I hope that we are at a place societally where we're starting to care and show that we care about other people. And like that was kind of missing the past 4 years. I mean, I don't know what your guys' views are, but like I feel like that wasn't there. It wasn't in the mainstream. And I think now like everyone's trying to heal and recover from this idea that we shouldn't really be divided because everybody wants the same thing. Like everybody wants to eat and to feed their kids.
Right.
Everyone cares about their families. Everyone cares about their own goals and dreams. Like all this other bullshit and like people playing people against other people and like QAnon. Like, I just
Yeah.
can't like. It's not. It's just not like helping.
name
That's
drop.
not a real problem. Like, if we focus on each other, I think that it
Right.
will be a lot harder to hate people because like we all just want like the same thing. And I hope that that is like what we gain as a whole from this experience.
Oh yeah. No, I feel the exact same way. I think that a lot of this has been happening for a while as far as like just the division of stuff and about how everything is, you know, just you're either 100% on this team or it's like absolutely like screw you, I hate you. And that over the last 4 years that's really just blown up into what it is now, but it's been happening for a lot longer than
Yeah.
that. And I think I think that as much as that's still kind of the narrative that people are trying to paint on whatever side of the fence you fall on, it's like, yeah, but there's bigger things at play here as far as like, we should be caring more about each other. Like we all should be in this together to a certain extent. Like we don't all have to get along and all have to have the same views, but there's a civility and there's a respect that needs to be had, I think.
There's
And
big problems that we haven't addressed and
yeah,
need to. And it's like
yeah,
the pandemic's like
absolutely.
what a perfect time to say, well, we're all fucked together because like no one's this
Right.
isn't like
Yeah.
like you were in it together. Literally the entire world is in this shit. So it's hard to say that we're not all connected at this moment.
Right. Yeah.
It's very
I
true.
totally agree. Totally agree. And I think
I think it's the best things have ever been, and Jesse knows I'm like the farthest from optimist you're gonna meet, but
yeah.
I'm a hardcore statistician, and statistically things are better for humanity. I mean, we're on the peak of a couple real. We have there's crises contingent, so there's things that we need to look out for that we're not right now. But the
Right.
reality is this like the statistics are that things have honestly never been better, and they're going to keep improving. And the feeling of the last 4 years is the tension between the fact that America's culture is based in polemics, it's based in division, it's based in not agreeing with each other violently.
Yeah.
Congressmen stabbed each other on the floor of the fucking on the floor of the House of Representatives in like 1830s. You guys, like this stuff is not new. No matter how the media spins it, it's just our fucking history. And just like Amanda Gorman, if you guys watched the inauguration, Amanda Gorman's poem was so powerful when she's like, "It's more being an American is more than a pride we inherit. It's how the past we stepped into and how we repair it." And that's where we've been at, and that's where we're really going to hit the gas pedal now. So, and that's what I think we're really at. It's gonna get better, a lot better.
Yeah, awareness is the first step to making stuff better. Like acknowledging the past and being, you know, part of a better thing. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
people
well,
Right.
as
are
long as I don't
on
have to work too
board.
hard, yes, I'm down.
Yeah, people are on board. People are on board. And they
I mean,
have
I'll
been
pick up
on
some
board.
trash or something, but that's it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's true. It's true. I think, and then that's part of what I mean. We make this a point of everything in the podcast, and we rarely get out of this kind of arc because we want to make sure that that's where we stay dialed in. I think for sure, it's because that's the movement that's happening, and it's a glorious thing to be a part of. On my good days, I
Right.
say things like that.
Yeah. And I don't know. For me, it's weird because I'm in this middle of like, overall, I am an optimist about things and not like naive, but I
Naive.
genuinely do believe that there are more good or decent people in the world than negative people that want to divide people or hurt people or things like that. That's the way it is. And when you get out and travel more and meet more people, you get a feel for that, and you get a feel for more of like where the country and the world is, and things like that. And on the other side of it, it is a matter of I don't necessarily think that no matter who's in office, especially the higher up you go beyond the state level, especially, it's like I don't think any of these people have our best interest in mind. But that's all the more reason why we need to look out for each other and be respectful and civil. Because if you listen to that George Carlin bit about this country being sort of bought and owned, it's like, well, yeah, in a lot of ways, I agree with him on that. But at the same time, I do think voting is important, and that's where he and I differ in that. If you know who your mayor is and you know who your local representatives are and your state representatives, those are the people that are going to have way more impact on your day to day life than the president. The president is like a figure person that sets sort of a precedent in the country. But as far as day to day actions, it's like, yeah, find out what's going on in your community and get to know who's running for office, like campaign for people that you like.
Well, yeah, be
There's a,
involved. Like, I feel like
yeah,
that's the only way that will kind of change the whole vibe of everything like how people are kind of bought and sold, and like in terms of like who our politicians are and who they're really looking out for. I think us being aware and us really being involved in that is like what would probably make it better. And I also think that even without politicians, like we have so much power to help each other that we
yes.
haven't really, I know I haven't exercised. That's another thing with music is like you do tend to like get so caught up in yourself. It's very like insular, like what am I doing?
Yeah.
How am I doing? Like blah blah blah. And you kind of like don't like I feel like I got absorbed into that, and that's not like
Hmm.
what I want to do. So I think
Yeah.
like helping other people for moving forward, when the world does open up again, I really want to like do more to influence like what I can in the communities that I am a part of. And I think there's a lot of people that have kind of come to that realization.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One of our first guests was on episode 3. She works at Infrasonic Studios in Nashville with Pete Lyman and is the studio manager there. She's also a mastering engineer, and her name's Raylan Janicki. And her mom just did this thing in her mom lives in upstate New York and started this thing where she's doing like a community food pantry and basically like putting food in it. It's kind of like, hey, take what you need. If you have more than what you need, put some stuff back. And it's basically like this universal thing to like help out her neighborhood and people in her community. And it just got picked up by like the local NBC station. They did a story on it. And so it's like, even little things like that, if you're not going to be involved in politics, like seeing that news article the other day, I'm like, yeah, I could do something similar like this. There's no reason why I can't. Doesn't have to be all political vote, like who you're voting for. You can get out in your community and do good things,
Yeah, it's better if you
and
just
that's
do
also,
that instead of getting political, because
It will help more people.
political movements tend to divest your involvement and kind of reroute it into other energies. And this way, you
right.
can see the results with your own eyes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
music
know,
too, like I want to find a way to make music like something that benefits people because I think it does. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we all know that like that we
Mm-hmm.
are affected by music and our music affects others. And I think like being conscious of like doing it for that purpose has changed how I approach it. And I think,
mm.
adding something to the world rather than adding something just to my own like resume or whatever.
Mm.
It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody cares about that. But I think like trying to either makes something that will make people happy or something people can relate to or teaching
Right.
kids or just finding ways to like make music not just such a selfish thing. People like lots of people have always said pursuing being a musician is a selfish lifestyle, and I think it is to a degree. But I think once you get to a certain point, you can like allocate your attention. I don't think you should just continue along that self-interest.
First of all, next time somebody tells you that, if they're your friend, then cool, whatever. But if you don't like them, be like, you're a sociopath and you're ego shaming me. Get the fuck out of my face. I do things in my community. I help people have a good time at shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like many of the best people I know are musicians, and they do so much for other people because they are empathetic. And I think, like that is the thing. Like, so, yeah.
It's our flaw, our glorious flaw. That's sarcasm, I guess.
I agree. I think that I've met more caring and giving people through music and artist people or people who are around that than necessarily in just everyday life. And I think because there are more empathetic people, like you were saying, I think it's just kind of comes with the territory. Especially, I'm a firm believer in you are like, whatever you attract is what you put out there. And so if you're a good person and you're putting that out in the world, you're going to tend to run into more good people than you do shitty people. So
yeah, I believe that too.
That resonates with me on an emotional level, but we're going to talk about an algorithm later and how we're going to actually dispel that as a notion in terms of its viability. I mean, I want it, I hope for it, but I also know that my hope is just a statistical aberration in itself because...
Fair enough.
What you believe, though. I mean, I think it's like, it's what you believe. We're in reality. I'm in my little square right here. You're in your little square.
Yeah.
You're in the Indiana square.
I'm in the Indiana square, and my reality is very different from what it is in California.
Yeah. Well, on the plus side, you're not only next to Sweetwater, but probably the biggest free candy supply on the planet. So you've got all the Smarties and Tootsie.
I'm so confused. Did I really miss that whole thing about the candy? Is that a phenomenon there?
There's a lot
of candy. Okay, cool. That's
if you
great.
want rolls, you come to Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
Fort Wayne? That's where you're at. Nice.
Not just any Tootsie Rolls, but those got to be like
I got very close
Sweetwater.
there.
So it's
it.
Yeah, it's like those are the best.
Yeah.
And you'll get a kind fellow that you'll buy one patch cable for your pedal board, and they'll call you.
Called.
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to check in. You bought this patch cable 5 years ago. Just want to make sure everything was okay. How's your day going? You're like, oh, it's good. And you're like, all right, well, if you need anything, just let me know.
Now I'm imagining a place that's like you go to get patch cables, but it's set up like a farmer's market. And I'm like, I'm seeing this whole thing.
It's a whole thing. It's like a campus. It's like a literal massive. It has a coffee shop and a restaurant and a hair salon and a slide and a...
Oh, I didn't know that. There was
slide. Damn.
Dude, that is
what the hell are you doing living in this shithole? Oh my Jesus. You're gonna slide. They have candy in a slide in Fort Wayne. I'm out of here.
That is what we have.
I mean, can I ask you though? I'm a native Angelino and I don't have anything, but this is my life experience. So I wonder, like, what was it like for you, Jordan West, moving to the big armpit or whatever you call it? What do they call LA? Do you guys call it LA? What do y'all call it out there?
Just LA.
Okay.
Or
when I took my cousin, when I took my nephew to Kentucky, they were like, "Oh, y'all from like Hollywood, the West Coast." They didn't say LA. They kept saying things like that, and I was like, "Yeah,
Hollywood. You're from Hollywood."
Yeah. I was like, yep, we're the Kardashians. We're from Hollywood. Yeah, I'm Rob Kardashian. Nice to meet you, motherfucker. Yeah, no. I mean, I just, and it's different because every place is different,
Yeah, I mean, I had an interesting experience. Like, my husband got into UCLA for law school, so we lived in like student housing. Which we were very lucky on that point because like my other bandmates lived in Los Angeles and they didn't have the help of like a campus subsidy that would like make things nice. So they got real. They would be like, "What is happening?" And I'd be like, "This is great. Like, there's like everything's amazing." And they're like, "Okay."
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But it was cool. I really like. I love Los Angeles, and I feel like it it did, like, there was a point where I noticed that I needed to leave Los Angeles every so often, or I was getting in this like weird, my brain changed or something, and I would have to just leave and
Yeah.
go to Yosemite and come back. And I don't know if I'm a total like hipster, ridiculous person for saying that, but I had to like
No.
go to
It's a real
nature.
phenomenon. I think they're actually sociologists studying it right now, dude, for real. That there's something about like it has to do with people who work in the industries. Obviously, that's why most people are here, and that pressure and that the constant crush of the city and the population density. It usually makes people feel like the instinctive move to like get some space for a while so they can recuperate. Like I
Yeah.
mean, it's a real phenomenon whether or not that's bullshit or not. It's like every weekend, we up here in Palmdale and we see everybody in their Teslas driving north on our freeway, and it's like, yeah, you're welcome. Don't stop though. That
Don't
Tesla's mine.
But it was, yeah, so it was cool. It was like a little overwhelming to realize that everyone is so good. There's so many people that are so good at so many things, and that
Yeah.
it slaps you in the face. Like in Indiana, it's very much like, well, she's good at that. And then this is the person who's good at this. And there's like, 5 people that are really good at each thing, and you know who they are, and you can become one of them. And then it's like, cool, I'm done. I made it to the like it's fine. But when you go to LA, it's not that. It's like, no, like people are moving here every day that are going to be younger, better, smarter, whatever. Like you have endless competition, but you also have like endless inspiration and
Hmm.
endless people to work with, and that whole feeling of everything just pushing forward. Like
Hmm.
everything when you're there feels like it's just like there's a ball rolling behind you and just like running away from it.
It's an
And
urgent place
Yeah.
to live.
it's cool. It's
It
really
is.
cool.
It's
I
urgent though.
really, I love it. It's so stressful and amazing.
I mean, it is. It's like I think it's just we're all the product of our upbringing, right? I'm like I'm just always so fascinated by the experience of somebody who makes that trip. I have known a lot of people in my life who have made the sort of that trek, and it's admirable
Yeah.
because it takes a risk that it's like, look, I'm in my element because this is where I'm from. If I have nowhere else to go, so if I end up on the street, I know these streets. I was like, I couldn't imagine being from across the country, removed from everything I do know and care about. So it's one of those things that always interests me on the human side of things because it takes courage. You're a talented cat, but it takes courage on anybody's level. Be like, well, I know Indiana because it's the thing that's you already got it locked down. It's Indiana. You probably run things out there. Like you probably have like a little fiefdom that you and your husband are running, which is legit. And then out here, you're like, oh man, this Game of Thrones is shit for real out here. It's all Targaryens and shit.
I felt like I ran things, certainly, because I was an arrogant asshole when I was younger. And,
Whoa.
that wasn't true necessarily, but I did feel
Mhm.
that way. And then in LA, I got smashed, like smacked down. Like I went from being 100 feet tall to being like a little ant. And
Yeah.
I think that was a very healthy, a good thing for me. And for everyone that moves from a smaller place to a bigger place. And I think whether it's LA, New York, whatever, it's like you're now surrounded by people that are not like you in any way. They don't have any of the same background things as you. They don't see the world the same. And they're very talented. And it doesn't matter if you're good. Like to a degree it does, but it really like comes down to other things, like being able to adapt and being
Mm-hmm.
nice to people and being like having your
Right.
shit together a little bit. But for me, it was great, and I'm really excited to go back. Like we left all our stuff in storage, so we have to go back. So but I'm happy to be here too. I love Indiana, but there's not that same sense of like everyone's creating and everyone's making.
No, it's yeah,
There are people
Sure.
here doing that, but
for
they
sure.
don't
But
more. There's just so much more.
Yeah.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
energy is infectious in a way, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's like it definitely motivates. I don't know. I drove through Indiana briefly, and I was like, it's very pretty. It seems like the spot to chill, but we were on a
Very calm.
fucking itinerary. So I was like, all
Yeah,
right, I'll
both
be back,
times.
Indiana. Peace.
Yeah, it's a nice break.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so you just mentioned moving forward, actually, which I wanted to ask you about this just to get your overall opinion. I consider you part of the next sort of generation of people, or I guess it could be current generation of people to look to as far as, when you want to see who's doing stuff and who's really out there in the looping world and music world and like who's doing it, like, and who's doing big things. I would consider you a part of that.
Oh.
And part of it is what we've all been talking about this whole time of like embracing looping, embracing, sample pads and in different ways than say other people have done it in the past. And just basically adapting, like we've been talking about, not being afraid of things. And you hear a lot with certain people about talking about the future of music and where it's going and things like that. And not even with the pandemic, but just in general, a lot of people, depending on what culture they're coming from or what genre, have a bunch of different opinions on like, oh, this is dead. No, this is, alive and well. You don't understand. I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on where you think, music is headed, the future of it in general, what it will look like, just your kind of overall take on where things are going.
My thoughts and kind of hopes are that people are tired of bullshit. And I think we are seeing that in the music, like in who the artists are that are rising out of things. I think people that are a little more genuine, a little more willing to take risks musically, a little more interesting maybe than like 5 to 10 years ago when it felt very cookie cutter, very just the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Like at the same time when like that stupid flute sample was in every pop song, like I was done with I was just done with it. It was like that flute thing from the Justin Bieber song was in every pop song, and I was like, what is this? And I think that to a degree that always happens. Like it's just like there's always this, plastic music, and there's always like real music, and whoever you are depends on what you think about it. But I think people are craving like rock and roll. People are craving like authentic experiences. People are craving like less tracks and more live. And I think that's kind of where it's going to go. Like I think Grace is like a good example of what people want, because when we go to those shows, people, it's like a cathartic like thing for them to be there. Like it's like a real show. Like she's putting everything into that moment, and we're all putting everything. It's not, things could go wrong and often do, but it doesn't matter because it's like music. And I think that is hopefully the direction it's going to go with all the indie like bands and all the like abilities that musicians have to get their stuff out there. I think it's totally reasonable that like more and more maybe bands will come back as opposed to solo artists. At least I hope so, because I love like the band, and I feel like we kind of lost it a little bit in the recent kind of history. So I hope bands make a return, and with like looping, I'm really hoping that it can be still a live experience. Like I don't ever want to have pre-recorded tracks. I don't ever want to have pre-recorded loops. I want everything to be live. I'm very like set on that. So like I don't know if that's where it will go, but I would hope that like looping artists would be down to just perform live, and not, I know it's like easier and it's safer to have like that security of like the pre-recorded bass track that is first, or whatever track is first, and just kind of pretend you're playing it so that way it's perfect. But I think we should not do that. I think like having that element of like some mistakes and some like feeling that you may fall off of a cliff is like the whole thing. So I hope music progresses to where there's that feeling again. And I think like Brittany Howard is doing it. Like Nate Smith, who's like one of my favorite current drummers. I think like John Barrett is doing it. Like Aaron Sterling is in that band is ridiculous. Always has been.
All of those people rule.
Yeah, they're just so good, and they're so like raw, and it's real. And I hope that is becoming another cool thing, as opposed to just, I love Katy Perry, huge fan, but I don't think we need so many Katy Perrys. I think we can just have a little more like authentic, like shit might break type of music.
Yeah, I agree.
Let that be the criteria going forth, Zeitgeist. Does your music have that special quality of shit might break? If not, you're listening to some played out shit.
I'm talking to you, Zeitgeist.
Hey, Zeitgeist. I'm your hep uncle telling you what's what. Oh God. Oh, that's great
well,
though. That's like all I can say is I hope so too.
Yeah.
That
I-
had a
Yeah,
lot of my own personal sentiments wrapped up in that idea for sure, dude.
yeah. I think it is. There's examples you can look to a lot of people that you mentioned and beyond, and people that have been around for decades at this point that are still doing that are also examples too.
Yeah.
From either 90s 2000s at this
Sparks?
point that it's like there's
Sparks has been around for 50 fucking years now. They're still a band technically.
and I'm sorry, this may be a controversial suggestion, but Dave Matthews Band too, whether you like them or not, like their whole thing is not playing the same set every night.
Well, they kind
and
of
so,
like.
Don't be talking shit about Dave Matthews in my house.
I'm just saying, sometimes you bring that up, and then some people are like,
God, that was they're still one of my favorite bands. I mean,
I got to play
Stefan Lassard, dude, bass player. Come on, son.
I got
Oh my God.
his drum set last year, and it was.
no way.
Girl,
The whole
what?
band made fun of me for it because I was so excited, and they were like, "Oh, but it's Dave Matthews Band," and I was like, "I don't care. This is like I played along to this shit, and now I'm gonna play this drum set," and it was great.
Fuck yes, you are.
Yeah,
Been on the
but
drum set at least once, and it took a long time because there's a lot of shit going on.
Right?
Yeah.
This shit is like it's like a mini, like it's like Neil Peart meets like just little like gamelan type shit. It has little things everywhere. I seen it. It's like a little bell ruffle thing or whatever that is.
There's a surprising amount of bells.
Right? Homie gets down on the bells. Carter loves the bells. He rocks the bells.
He probably hits each one like one time, but it was great. And that I do not hate on Dave Matthews Band, even though I know it's like a thing, but.
Look, just because fucking frat guys like Dave Matthews Band doesn't disqualify Dave Matthews Band for being rad.
No, they.
I mean, I don't go to shows because of the crowd, but hey.
But yeah, I'm all about any band that is going to play live and like really play live. I think even if I don't like the music, I don't care. I still am about that. I used to play in like psychedelic bands, and that was the best thing ever. And I don't listen to that music, but playing it was awesome. And the audiences always
Right.
had a great time. And I feel like,
They sure did.
they really did.
They were like, yeah!
They're like, you guys playing in Seven or in outer space.
Yeah!
Man, there's 3 drummers and they're all pink. This is
This
awesome.
is so great.
But yeah, I hope that's
Wow.
where it's going. And if it's not, that's at least where I'm going to go. So I think you can
Yeah,
always
Everyone's
find
going to follow you.
You can
Everyone's
always
going to
find
follow
Yeah.
you, dude.
Yeah, especially now, there's more room, I think, than ever to carve out your own thing and not have to adhere to whatever the trend is, or and even the idea of like a trend seems a little bit ridiculous now that everybody's kind of tuned into their own, frequency of things. Anyway,
Well, now
That's
you got
fine.
me excited because my hot take is now is the era of the covert trend and shit. It's like you find out like 3 years after the fact, there's a Wikipedia article like people were doing this like normcore. Normcore was a thing like 10 fucking years ago. But, I'm a dad, so I found out about it like 3 years ago. And I'm like, normcore? It's all about trying to dress as plain as possible and shit. Like Old Davey, remember how we talked about the other episode? It's that same shit. And I was like, this is a trend? It's one of those internet trends. Sorry, I got really hyped about that idea. I'm a fixator.
I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm
You don't know about
fascinated.
normcore? Oh my gosh.
No.
This happens
No,
once an
I have no-
episode now where I'm just like, I go off for 5 minutes about a thing in loving detail. And he's like, oh, that sounds great. Never heard of that. And I'm like, okay.
No, I don't know. I'm like I'm in touch with a lot of things going on, but in some ways I am so out of touch, and I'm like, what is that?
You did it
and then
again.
you don't.
You're out of touch, I'm out of
know- they wrote a song about that. You're out of
About
touch.
this
That's
very
me.
moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about this very moment. Exactly.
Nailed it, dude. What do you think, Captain?
That's I was
Are you
gonna say,
gonna?
Jordan.
Are you? Where's the landing gear at? What's your?
Oh, you're talking to
Yeah,
me.
what's your 20? What's your 20?
Oh,
Everyone
well, no,
else
that
is
was
getting
that
my
was-
lingo.
No, that was my big question about where do you think music's going. So I'm good.
I thought that was your
I was
endo.
gonna say,
I thought that was.
yeah,
Nice.
that was the landing gear is come out, and then we're slowly making our way down to the runway. Unless you got anything, Davey, I think I'm good.
No,
I don't
no,
wanna
it's been a glorious and deep dive, and very much appreciate you, Jordan. Thank you for your time, and
Yes.
we'll see you live sometime when you and Grace are out kicking it again on tour and in the future and all that good stuff. And thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes.
This was really fun. It was a good post-show hang.
Hey,
Well, the show I had 5 years ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
she remembered
Exactly.
the show. All right,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. No, this is I mean, you're the real deal, and I mean the fact that you're as open as you are to come on here and talk about music just demonstrates how cool you are and your views on things. It just shows that you're down to earth, and it's I don't know. I really am excited for all the success you have and hope to see what else you've got in store as far as music and new stuff coming, coming from the Jordan camp. So I can't wait.
Big things.
Yeah. We'll do this in person in 2021 or 2.
Yes.
Whenever we can. We'll do it in
Yeah,
I was gonna. Yeah, we got to get Tyler Davis
Yeah.
in, who has also said he would come on the podcast graciously. So we got to get him in here at some point. But yeah, you and Tyler and everyone else just having a meal at an actual restaurant, maybe after a gig, would be the greatest thing. So
All right, it'll happen then.
Denny's it is.
sweet, awesome. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did.
Welcome back to Podcast.
Hey,
Hey!
all right. Welcome back.
Wow. Okay. So.
Oh, yes.
Try time with Zeke and Kidley. Or
Oh, I love the morning DJ voice.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, I don't have to say it was rad. You were listening if you got to this point. That was a fucking rad conversation. And it was nice to have somebody hit all the same sort of points and beats that of why I like hanging and talking with creative people. And when she kept bringing those up, I was like, yes, you understand. So it was lovely. I enjoyed it.
yes, you found yet another kindred spirit to put in your little Funko collection of kindred spirits.
Yeah, collect the whole
Yeah.
set. Yeah, no, it was awesome, and I hope that we get to do it again one day. And it was cool seeing you guys click too, considering that we've met a couple times, and I've been to her gigs before and stuff. But since y'all haven't met, it was cool seeing you guys have a back and forth and joking around and all that, and also finding a kindred spirit with yourself, sir.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I always imagine like how could anybody relate to somebody as fucking bizarre as myself, but she did a real good job of trying, and she's a wonderful person in her own right. Besides that, which was like, you don't need to make that effort. I'm not important. So I was like, yeah, it was definitely a legit hang. Like we got into some real talk. Like sometimes I'm pulling back the fucking curtain. I give a fuck. Sometimes we really have to try to like look at each other across the Zoom. Citizens. We're talking to citizens. Me and
Yes.
Jesse have to look across and be like, how do we get that answer out of this person? And this wasn't like that where we were like, we asked a question and she knew the tenor of it, and it was definitely like, it was such a flowing combo.
Well, yeah, and going a step beyond that too, just in general, having to connect with people that you've never met before over Zoom or have only talked with a few times could be kind of a daunting thing, And
Well, I was a sex
Yeah,
worker, so
both-
none of that's hard for me, but for you guys, I get it.
that's true. I forgot, about your sort of OnlyFans empire that you've been working on.
I
and
still
building
have
for the
two
last few
two
years.
records in the Guinness Book.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, care to share what those records are? He asked, being that the improv rule is that you
All I'm
always say
going to tell
yes
you,
and keep the
it was the
volleyball
most
in the air.
anybody had ever done of either of those in a day.
Oh, all right. Well, I hit the improv volleyball back towards you, and you sent it back to me, and there you go. That's how
That's how that works. Yeah.
Yes.
No.
No. Speaking of how.
Yes. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. No. That's, it was that no of reset, not that no of disagreeing or wanting to stop you.
okay.
It was the reset no. The lazy
No,
reset.
As always, my obligatory hard segue into thanking the listeners for enjoying this podcast and supporting us. I would like to say thank you, and continuing to support this podcast is a thing that keeps us going. Any comments, any likes, any downloads, it means a lot to us. So we appreciate it.
We count every view of every episode, and we draw little hearts around it because we think you're cool. And we're feeling shy, but we really love you. And thank you.
Yeah, all that good shit.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So, and you know what? If you want us to, move in a certain direction with, hey, like it would be cool to get this person on, or like, hey, what do you guys feel about this? Like, we can incorporate that stuff into the show too. We want to hear from the fellow citizens out there. We have plenty of people we're going to ask. We have plenty of people that we're going to have on. We have episodes scheduled as we speak. But hey, we want to get your input too. So leave a comment, tell your friends, send us a DM, slide in the DMs, whatever you want to do.
Gently,
we want to hear from you. Gently. Well, of course.
We've been hurt before.
Obviously. Yeah. It's you gotta romance the situation. You gotta ease into.
You gotta romance this
You
situation.
gotta be curious. So, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
All right, adios.
Sonic City Council was created by Jesse Davidson and Davey Sipes and engineered by Max Taylor at Desert Sound Studio in Palmdale, California. Thank you to Disaster Cabinet for the outro music. Intro music written by Max Taylor. Sonic City Council is produced in association with Amped Music Academy and the Showcase Venue. For more information, visit theshowcasevenue.com.